to work. The House of Representatives is set to hold a series of historic votes this week. We have a preview from Capitol Hill. Welcoming visitors. An update on one of the most important sites in Christianity closed since early March because of the coronavirus crisis. Prayers for China. Pope Francis focuses on the faithful in China in his Sunday address to pilgrims. And Deo Gratias, details on a documentary on an American friar who is on the path to sainthood. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, May 26, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Donald Trump said on Twitter today that the transition to greatness has started. Stocks soared after the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange reopened for the first time in 2 months. And U.S. consumer confidence is up despite the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, here at the White House today, President Trump saw some positive developments, and earlier this afternoon, Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said she went to Mass this past weekend. She saw people social distancing and washing their hands. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany addresses reporters in the briefing room.
The president, as he's noted, he wants to see society reopen, wants to see the economy reopen, but we do want to do so safely. And there are institutions that have put into place these social distancing measures, and people are making it cognizant, a part of their everyday lives.
This morning, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo rang the opening bell on Wall Street. Stocks surged. The president reacted on Twitter. Stock market up big. States should open up ASAP.
It's an exciting feeling to get back here.
The New York Stock Exchange reopened its trading floor for the first time since mid-March, when the virus shut it down.
And I think not just for us, but I think for the country, it's a great sign, it's a great symbol of our economy getting back in motion.
President Trump also defended his pandemic response, tweeting, "If I hadn't done my job well and early, we would have lost 1.5 to 2 million people." He also slammed the Democratic presidential candidate, saying Joe Biden's handling of the H1N1 swine flu was a complete and total disaster. Looking ahead to the Republican National Convention, the president has been pushing the state of North Carolina and its governor to hold it when August rolls around, or hold it somewhere else.
Mar-a-Lago might be willing to host a convention that has no safety precautions in place, but Charlotte, North Carolina is not.
One Charlotte councilman isn't keen on seeing an arena packed with thousands inside.
That doesn't mean that there can't be some sort of an in-person convention, but it would undoubtedly have to be scaled down and made at least partially virtual or remote.
Also tonight, Johns Hopkins University is reporting that worldwide, more than 5.5 million people have been infected. Over 348,000 people have died. Also tonight, all 50 states have eased up on their stay-at-home restrictions, and there's hope tonight, optimism for a race for the vaccine. Tracy?
Okay, thank you, Owen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Thank you so much. Well, Americans await Washington's next move in passing more federal aid for Americans affected by the coronavirus pandemic, as lawmakers continue to wrestle over whether to go big with the next spending bill. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports now. Eric?
Well, Tracy, I think it's important to remember that Washington has been here before. I think we remember the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Back then, the House and Senate debated on the amount of aid was going to be given. And back then, it was the banks that needed help. Well, today, it's the small businesses that are looking to Washington, D.C. for help.
The House will be in order.
The House prepares to return this week for a brief session tomorrow and Thursday. On the agenda, a renewal of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, giving federal authorities authorization to conduct surveillance of suspected foreign terrorists. Plus, the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act of 2020 to condemn gross human rights violations in China. And extending the window of time for small businesses to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program, aimed at preserving jobs hurt by the COVID-19 shutdowns. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi notified members last week. Following advice from the attending physician, she would be enacting a 45-day covered period, allowing for the committees to work remotely and for remote voting on the House floor.
It's not just about proxy voting, which we will be prepared for. It's also about how committees can do their work virtually, in person, or in a hybrid way.
Today, the House Oversight Committee held a hearing virtually and in person, exploring the Trump administration's coronavirus response. Ranking member Jim Jordan joined by phone and criticized the Democratic leadership for not requiring members to return to the Hill.
Bring us back to D.C. to conduct meaningful oversight, to hold China accountable for this pandemic, and to start having real hearings in person like we are supposed to in the United States Congress.
House leaders did strike a deal on an amendment to prevent the FBI from collecting Americans' web browsing history without a warrant. That amendment will likely be voted on this week, and it could change the way that the FBI conducts its foreign intelligence investigations. Tracy?
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill. Thank you, Eric. China is threatening the United States if it interferes in Hong Kong, and the Catholic leader of the region is trying to dispel fears about a new security law.
Rights and freedoms are not absolute. If we want to protect the majority of the people, then if the minority of the people, indeed a very small minority of people, are going to breach the law, to organize and participate in terrorist activities, to subvert the state power, then of course they have to be bounded by the needed legislation.
The protesters rallied again on Sunday and sharply criticized the proposed law, which would ban secessionist activity and foreign influence in Hong Kong. The Church of the Nativity reopens for visitors. A Greek Orthodox bishop led the reopening earlier this morning. The Basilica of the Nativity in Bethlehem was closed almost 3 months ago due to the coronavirus pandemic. Only 50 people at a time are allowed in now. The Church of the Nativity was built on the spot where Jesus was born. There are other reopenings in Portman to the faithful. The Vatican museums will begin welcoming visitors again starting next Monday. They have been closed for nearly 3 months now. A number of safety precautions are in place. Reservations are required. Visitors must wear masks, and temperatures will be taken at the entrance. Pope Francis announces that he will be joining Marian shrines around the world to pray to the Virgin Mary for help amidst the pandemic. The Holy Father will pray the Rosary at the Lourdes Grotto in the Vatican Gardens on Saturday evening. The Holy Father also invites the faithful to pray for Catholics in China.
Uniamoci spiritualmente ai fedeli cattolici in Cina.
At his Sunday address to pilgrims at the Vatican, Pope Francis assured Catholics in the communist country of his prayers for them. The Pope has focused on the faithful in China since the beginning of his pontificate, and in 2018 he signed a provisional agreement with Beijing on the appointment of bishops. Andrea Galeoducci, Vatican analyst for EWTN News, joins us now from Rome. Andrea, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Andrea, was there a reason that Pope Francis prayed for Chinese Catholics on May 24th?
Yes, actually, May 24th is the International Day of Prayer for Chinese Catholics. It was established back in 2007 by Benedict XVI. Benedict XVI in 2007 sent a letter to the Catholics of China. It was a very important letter because it was about life of the Catholics in China, about how Catholics have to live with governmental issues, with the issues that the government wanted to get into the religious freedom issues. It was about how bishops had to be appointed. And along with this letter, Pope Benedict said that on May 24th, all the church has to pray for the Catholics in China, because on May 24th is the day of Our Lady of Sheshan. Sheshan is the major shrine in China. It's a shrine with a huge pilgrimage that goes over there during all the month of May. This year it was more difficult to go because all the pilgrimages were closed because of the coronavirus crisis, but it's important. It's an important reference point for Catholics in China there.
Andrea, can you talk about the current diplomatic relations between the Holy See and China?
Well, there are no diplomatic relations between the Holy See and China. There is not an exchange of nuncios or ambassadors. But recently, the Archbishop Gallagher, that is the so-called Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Holy See, met with the Minister for Foreign Affairs of China in Germany, where they were at an international meeting. It was one of the first meetings of this level in 40 years, and it's because the Holy See and China have a provisional agreement on the appointment of bishops that was signed back in 2018. September 2018, and now it's going to be renewed, I think. It should expire in August. So there are ongoing talks, but not for the diplomatic relations, mostly for the appointment of bishops. As we know, Chinese government do not recognize the appointments of the Holy See, so they came to an agreement to have bishops with the twofold approval of the Holy See and the Chinese government. It's a compromise. It's been very much criticized even within the church, but it's the only way sometimes for the church to live in these kind of difficult situations.
In Taiwan, China's neighbor, of course, Pope Francis just appointed a new archbishop. What's the significance of this?
Well, it's quite significant to have a Taiwanese Catholic Church. Taiwan is considered a rebel province by the China, and just a bunch of states, 15 states, recognize Taiwan as a state. One of these states is the Holy See. So for the Holy See, Taiwan is very strategic from the geopolitical point of view. There is a nunciature to Taiwan that is called nunciature to China. So there is not a papal nuncio because Taiwan is not recognized. There is a lower rank official over there. But appointing a new Archbishop of Taiwan means a continuity in the church. It's the Archbishop of Taipei, Archbishop Chung. He comes because the former Archbishop just retired because he turned 75, and it's an appointment in continuity. So the church in Taiwan is keeping its work. It's kind of important for the China, even because in Taiwan there are people who translate into Chinese the papal speeches.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate your analysis. Andrea Galeoducci, Vatican analyst for EWTN News. Thanks again.
Thanks for you.
Coming up, why more parents may be considering homeschooling their children this fall. Memorial Day services and celebrations mark the unofficial start to summer, and even during a pandemic, large crowds gathered at some vacation destinations. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, as states are starting to open back up, this holiday weekend showed, even with social distance guidelines in place, people are eager to return to their normal way of life. The concern remains it could be too soon.
Packed beaches in Alabama, a state that has reopened for business. But these beachgoers are not following social distance guidelines. One man says he and his family have the same mindset about COVID-19.
We kind of just agreed that if we get it, we get it. We're going to handle it as a family and just get over it, because that's what family does.
From Alabama to California and even hotspot New York City, people enjoyed the long holiday weekend. Montgomery, Alabama Mayor Stephen Reed with a word of caution. His state is seeing a rise in cases.
We're still battling this pandemic. We still have to practice social distancing. We have to wear masks when we're in public. And people have to make sure that they are passing that on to friends, family, and colleagues.
Some memorial services were held virtually yesterday, including one at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington. At Arlington National Cemetery, those who paid the ultimate price continue to be remembered year-round. But some things have changed. Yesterday, only family members of those who were buried there were allowed to visit.
It means a lot to me that we can still be there for the families, even though, we're dealing with a lot as a country right now.
Fears about a resurgence of the coronavirus remain. This photo shows people partying closely together at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri over Memorial Day weekend. Now state officials are urging these people to self-quarantine for 2 weeks.
The Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services says close contact, even outdoors, can lead to infections that young people could bring home, creating the potential for a tragic and long-lasting impact if they infect vulnerable individuals. Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. As school systems around the country begin to figure out how to safely reopen in the fall, new polling indicates families may be considering other options. In a Real Clear Opinion research survey of more than 2,000 voters, more than 40% of parents say they are more likely to homeschool after the lockdowns are lifted. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about the benefits of homeschooling is Carrie Beckman, Executive Director of Regina Chaley Academy, a private independent academy operating in the Catholic tradition. Carrie, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Tracy. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Carrie, parents and educators are all trying to figure out, what's next for the school year coming up and what's it going to look like, even though things are still pretty fluid because of the pandemic. What are you hearing from families that you talk to, and what are their concerns?
Sure. There's a lot of concerns out there, particularly regarding what's going to be required of our children. Are they going to have to wear face masks? Are they going to have to do social distancing in squares? These are real concerns, and I understand them as a parent myself of 8 children. I think that what we are experiencing is something that oftentimes God allows, and that's kind of like an illumination, right? Where we can start to see just how important it is for parents to become center of their children's educational decisions. And we can look at morality and what's going on in the schools, and then we can now look at the physicality and the psychological effects of what COVID-19 may present to our families.
And I know that your school, Regina Chaley Academy, uses a hybrid approach. Can you talk a little bit more about that model and explain to us how it works?
Sure. So our students are homeschooled 3 days a week, and then they come to us on Mondays and Thursdays in a classroom, university style of education, where we have tutors who help explain the material so that parents don't have to be the experts. And people often say to me, can every parent homeschool? And the beautiful part about being Catholic is that we know through the sacrament of matrimony, we are given the grace to be the first and primary educator of our children. What Regina Chaley does is assist that process so that mom and dad don't need to go back to school and learn calculus. Regina Chaley can take care of that for you. But the real job that mom and dad have is to be the first and primary educator in the faith and in the moral school of salvation. And that's what Regina Chaley allows the parent to do.
Now, you talked about faith, and of course, it's so important to us. What's the added benefit of Catholic home education?
I think the added benefit, honestly, is the family, having the family together. Tracy, right now we are so overly scheduled. Of course, I say that, and many of our viewers tonight are sheltering at home, unfortunately. But if you just think back to what February looked like, and running that rat race it's really a detriment to the family and to building that relationship. And home education allows for you to use the educational process to build your family relationship. What a beautiful blessing it was for my family when we made the switch.
Well, Carrie, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insight with us. We really appreciate it. Carrie Beckman, Executive Director of Regina Chaley Academy. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy.
Up next, a look at a documentary on Blessed Solanus Casey, airing on EWTN. A new documentary premiered this evening on EWTN, giving viewers a closer look at the life of a Capuchin priest who could one day be declared a saint. The film Deo Gratias focuses on the life of Blessed Solanus Casey. Father Solanus, who died in 1957, was credited for many miraculous healings during his life and after. He was the doorkeeper at a monastery in Detroit and also served in New York. He was declared blessed in a ceremony in Detroit in 2017. Nearly 70,000 people attended. Aaron Berghaus, president of Hava Productions, joins us now on Skype from North Lake, Wisconsin. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Tell us a little bit more about Blessed Solanus Casey, who was born in Wisconsin, and also why you wanted to make this film about him.
Well, Blessed Solanus Casey is an amazingly humble and beautiful priest. And to get to know him is to love him. And with our dear friends at St. Francis de Sales Seminary, we were able to be at the beatification in 2017. And I can just say personally, on a personal level, having sat with Solanus for a good length of time now on this production, he will change your life. He is so magnificently beautiful. He will change your life.
I know the documentary is called Deo Gratias, which is thanks be to God in Latin, something Father Solanus said often. Was there anything that you learned about Blessed Solanus while making this film that maybe you didn't know before?
I would say that everything, I learned everything about Father Solanus in working on this film. He was a priest that I was not familiar with, and I happened to be living in Detroit at the time, and St. Francis de Sales Seminary, really in collaboration with Ahava, put together the film. Father Solanus is a priest who is so incredibly humble, and he teaches us to pray in a way which is complete confidence. And I think that once you learn how to pray the way that he prayed, it does change your life. And we learn that no matter where we are, who we are, whatever it is that God has planned for us, that anything is possible. And yes, we do have to thank God ahead of time. So Deo Gratias, yes.
I know you rediscovered your faith after seeing St. John Paul II back in 1999. Can you talk more about that?
I always say that it was St. John Paul II was the man that God used to call my heart to the church. And so at that time, then it was a letter to artists that he had written that I read. And at the same time, I did a consecration by St. Louis de Montfort. And ever since then, everything that I work on really is for God. It's for the glory of God. And it is the Mother of God who is continually lifting and guiding. Yeah, anything's possible.
Absolutely. It's so wonderful. Are there any other projects that your production company is working on right now?
Well, thanks for asking. You know, there is a film that we're working on that we hope to get out soon. It's Santiago, the Camino Within. It's the journey of St. James. It's another film that really changes my life. It's such a tremendous blessing to learn about these holy individuals, the saints that God gives us to teach us how to pray, and who just really wait for us to ask for their intercession. And then also there's a series that Ahava has that's called Echo, and the Echo series is by Bishop Donald Hine, and that goes through the catechism, all 36 chapters of the adult catechism. But yeah, right now in the hopper is Santiago, the Camino Within.
Thank you, Erin. Erin Berghaus, president of Ahava Productions. Deo Gratias, The Life of Father Solanus Casey, will re-air tomorrow at 2:30 a.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern. Also on EWTN, Mass airs throughout the day. Mass airs at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We are also airing other special programming, and you can find our schedule at EWTN.com. There you will also find Eucharistic adoration throughout the day. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.